This video is brought to you by Spotify, where music is for everyone. Good day, everyone. I'm Raven De Assis from 11 Mackenzie, your host for this podcast. Today, we will be talking about the separation of church and state. Until today, we heard the term the separation of church and state, but what is the meaning behind it? The separation of church and state is a philosophic and jurisprudential concept for defining political distance in the relationship between religious organizations and state. In the 1987 Constitution of the Philippines declares the separation of church and state shall be inviolable, Article 2, Section 6, and no law shall be made respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise, and enjoyment of religious profession and worship, without discrimination or preference, shall forever be allowed. No religious test shall be required for the exercise of civil or political rights. In the history, by passing through the numerous phases of colonial occupation, the relationship between religion and government in the Philippines has repeatedly changed. The country had close ties between the Catholic Church and the government during the Spanish colonial period from 1565 to 1898. The American concept of separation of church and state was introduced during the American colonial period in the Philippines Constitution of 1899 and remains as a part of the Philippine Constitution today. The Spanish period, beginning with the Christianization of the most of the Philippines in the 16th century, political power shared by the Catholic Church and the Spanish civil authorities. Horacio de la Costa, a Filipino Jesuit historian, mentions that the rules governing the cooperation of the two entities was set in the Patronato Real de las Indias, a combination of law and jurisprudence that governed the delicate relationship of the Holy See and the Spanish monarchy regarding colonial affairs. In the American period, Spain ceded the Philippines to the United States in 1898. By the end of February 1902, American forces had defeated the Philippine forces seeking to establish an independent Philippine Republic. The Philippine Organic Act of 1902 provided, among the other things, that no law shall be made respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise, and that the free exercise and enjoyment of religious profession and worship without discrimination or preference shall forever be allowed. And from the Commonwealth era, the prohibition of the 1935 Charter on Religion mimicked the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, but the sentence, the free exercise and enjoyment of religious profession and worship without discrimination or preference shall be forever allowed. No religious test shall be required for the exercise of civil political rights, were appended, and this section became the basis for non-establishment of religion and freedom of religion in the Philippines. And for the post-colonial era, with the guarantee of religious freedom in the Philippines, the Catholic clergy subsequently remained in the political background as a source of moral influence for many voters during elections until today. Political candidates generally court the clergy for support, although this does not guarantee victory for a candidate. The Philippines was placed under martial law by President Ferdinand Marcos, and relations changed dramatically as some bishops opposed the martial law. And lastly, Marcos' dictatorship. A new constitution was ratified in 1973, which included the separation of church and state clause, signaling a new development in the body of law on religious affairs. Joaquin Bernares, a Filipino Jesuit specializing in constitutional law, acknowledges that there were complex issues that were both to court and numerous attempts to use the separation of church and state against the Catholic Church, but he defends the statement, saying that the fact that he tried to do it does not deny the validity of the separation of church and state.